think it's important for the people to know that, because they hear the headlines about Ron DeSantis does, but they need to know how hard Democrats fight, even though we're so deeply in the minority. And we fought and tried to, in effect, save them from themselves and save the people of Florida to try to preserve abortion rights. And it failed. And I got to tell you, if I had to characterize this legislative session as a whole, I would say it's unpopular. They insist on fighting these unpopular culture wars that the people don't want. There was a University of North Florida poll recently that showed that 67% of Floridians believe that there should be access to abortion, including a number of Republicans. I mean, abortion access is healthcare. You just talked about it in the prior segment or with the prior guest. And given that at 6 weeks, most women don't know that they're pregnant, there are critical tests about the health of the baby and mother that can't be conducted until after 6 weeks. This effectively is an outright ban on abortion. So people are scared, they're worried, they're frustrated.
I want to talk to you about a few of the exchanges that caught my eye from the Florida debate. And what happens very early, where one of your colleagues stands up and asks one of the Republican representatives, well, is there any scientific basis for this legislation, right? Is any of this actually rooted in science and what is in the best interest of the health? And of course, the fellow representative bobs and weaves and doesn't actually answer and goes back to her fundamental talking points. If it is not about health and it is not about what is in the best interest of the patient, then what is a ban like this about?
Right. It's about saying the silent part out loud, which is that they don't want women to have choice, right? They are imposing their beliefs on everybody else in the state, which effectively is restricting the stories of women. You probably also heard during debate, many of us shared stories, either personal stories or the stories of women that we know who faced critical junctures in their pregnancy and needed to have access to an abortion and had trouble getting that access, or, some very scary situations. And so what this is about, I believe, is suppressing women's stories and effectively an outright ban on choice.
Well, to that point, let's talk about the exceptions, the few exceptions here. Life of the mother, but it's going to need to be proved by two physicians. Cases of rape and incest will require official documentation. I mean, all of that is not how this works in the real world, right? I mean, I have been on here with providers who have said, I am in moments where I am making decisions, life and death decisions for my patient. Instead of being focused on my patient, I'm on the phone with attorneys asking whether or not this is allowed under our state's new laws. And then in cases of rape and incest needing to require official documentation, I mean, talk to me about the barriers that sets up for someone who is trying to access care.
Right, Alicia. So what the Republicans did this time around is they tried to soften the ban that they'd passed previously with no exceptions for rape, incest, and human trafficking, and threw those in up to 15 weeks. And so a woman has to get all of that documentation. How dare they push survivors of domestic violence or incest or rape and push them to be on Ron DeSantis's timeline, having him look over their shoulders and say the steps that they have to take before they can get access to abortion as healthcare. So that's one barrier. The other is we still have a 24-hour waiting period. You have to have 2 doctor's visits. There's no opportunity for telehealth. This is such a draconian ban, and they're making it even harder to get the little protections that women do have. And I wanted to point out one other thing about that Supreme Court, where we're waiting on that decision. We expect that decision could come as early as this summer. So this is not some far off effective date. And if the court upholds the flip side of what you talked about earlier, if the court upholds that 15-week abortion ban, then that means that this 6-week abortion ban goes into effect. So we're hoping and watching and indeed praying that they find that 15-week abortion ban from last year unconstitutional.